How about that? There we go. Good morning. I'm very sorry about that. I couldn't find my audio stream just then. Excuse me. So this is a sunny Thursday morning. This is another Avolites session. This one is set up as an AI Q&A this morning. Now, we've been advertising this for a few days, but I have had no questions submitted to me at all. So if you do have any questions, it would be really, really helpful if you jump into the chat. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to share this at the same time. Yeah, if you jump into our chat room, so if you go onto the Avolites page, you can see the link to what we're doing there. There we go, I've nearly shared this to the AI group as well. There we go. Okay, so that one is shared. Sorry about that. Good morning to Carlos and Mikolos who have joined us. Good morning, Craig. Go for it. And what I'll do, if I don't get many questions, I will just go and continue with an overview of AI. For those of you who are not aware, we've been doing these webinars for a few weeks now, maybe about 8 weeks or so. All of the previously streamed webinars are found on the Avolites Facebook page. Okay, obviously, Craig, I can't speak for developers on a Q&A session. So that is actually, for what it's worth as well, you should probably bear in mind that Dave Green doesn't really work with us anymore. But any development questions, they would be better fired towards the development team. If you want to email on support@avolitesmedia.com, and I can forward that to the development team. Okay. Any functionality questions, however, I should be able to answer. I do appreciate the question. It's just unfortunate that I couldn't actually answer that particular one. Okay, so let's start with an overview then. Okay, so let's just go in there, click that one. Okay, so let's have an overview of AI then, as I don't have any questions that can be answered. Okay, so AI is a media server for playing back video, still images, generative patches, or live inputs. So we have a few versions available. We're looking at the software, obviously. The software is available to run on custom machines. So we have a selection of AI dongles on different levels, and the different levels give you access to different facilities of the software. The main difference between them is the amount of layers that can be addressed, the amount of universes that can be addressed in pixel mapping, and the amount of fixtures or outputs that can be addressed, and the resolutions. Loosely speaking, the lowest level dongle starts with a 2K by 2K output. You've got two of those. The medium one has 4 times 4K outputs, and the top one we describe as unlimited, and that's really going to come down to the hardware that you use it on. Excuse me. In terms of our media servers, all of the media servers come with the full license, the Miami level license, so it lets you do whatever you want. Currently we have the Q3 media server available. We're about to, hopefully towards the end of the year, we're going to start showing you some new models. We've been a little bit delayed by the current situation. We've started to put the new models on our website already. So we have the Q4 media server is going to be the next big generational release. So that's an extension of the current Q3, an addition, I should say, to the current Q3 range. So at the moment we just have the Q3, which currently provides a control and 3 other outputs. 2 are HD and 1 is 4K. The Q4 is a 4, so the base Q4 has 4 4K outputs. We have a switchable input system using the DeltaCast modules. We've got a lot of bells and whistles in the Q4. Actually, it's rated NVMe, so you get really fast throughput on the content drive. We've got a generative version of the Q4 as well, the Q4 Gen. So as you know, most of our machines are based around Radeon Pro graphics cards. The Q4 Gen is based around an AMD graphics card. No, it's not. It's based around a GeForce graphics card. It's based around a Quadro Q6000, I believe. So that one's really good for things like notch and real time. So if any of you were at LDI last year and went to our Splinter installation, you'll have seen the Q4 Pro running and doing its thing. Okay, so that briefly derailed myself there by talking about media servers. So the software itself, the software that you see, if we just forget the different limitations of the various different levels, essentially the software you're going to see is the same, whether you're running it on a custom machine or whether you are running it on a dedicated AI server. So when you use the software, in the bottom right hand corner we have the AI icon. This is your page button that lets you get through to the different sections of the software. So you can see that when I click on the AI button, it splits into 4 main groups. So we've got the file sections, that's going to be with things like save, save as, loading previously saved projects or loading from templates, and you've got the system settings. That next section, the next section is the performance section. So the performance section is what you use during your show to control your playback. The performance page is the one that we see now. That is for controlling your layers, triggering your media, accessing your banks, all that kind of stuff. We then have the timeline. We have the timeline, which allows you to pre-program complex events. So that the timeline can take video, it can take audio, It can take generative patches, it can take live inputs, and it's got a really useful control track on it, which allows you to sort of program things like play up to this point and then pause until I press go. You can create loop points, jump points, cue points, all that kind of stuff. Okay, where's my mouse gone? There we are. So we've also got the dynamic content page here. So the dynamic content page is used for playing back real-time generated content. So there we go, let's just put that random one on there, so you can see that as I actually change things like the rate, I can change stuff, I can change its offset. So each patch is its own thing, so you'll find different sets of controls on the different patches. A lot of the patches that we have included are made from ShaderToy. So shadertoy.com is a really nice website for learning and understanding real-time shader code. It's worth checking the usage license on anything you bring in from shader code. Some of them are open licenses, some of them have restrictions, so some of them might be restricted in terms of whether or not you can use it for a profitable event, or for commercial use I should say. So do double check on there, but it's a really good learning place anyway. And you can actually bring that code into AI. We've got templates that you see in the listing here on the left, so you can actually go and open those templates, modify them, save your patches and add them to this overall group of patches, so you can sort of build up a library of generative content which isn't locked to a specific resolution. So the next section along is the stage section. So the stage section is all about sort of building your project and controlling the elements within the project. So the stage construction page itself is the main window for that. So it's a 3D environment. It allows you to give your objects real-world 3D position relationships. So you can put things where they need to be. We have these four main fixture types. We've got the screen fixture that we can see here. We've got a projector fixture, which we would conventionally use for things like video mapping or to access the edge blending functionality. We have the modular LED fixture. So this one, if I just move that one over a little bit, this fixture is for playing back video, but it will convert the video into ArtNet, DMX, SACN or KINet in real time. On our hardware servers we can send a whole 256 complete universes, so that is 512 channels, 256 channels, 512 channels, sorry my brain went there, it's a little bit early for me, 512 channels across 256 universes, so it's a lot of data. And one of our hardware servers will happily run that at about 40 to 50 frames a second. So that's a lot of pixel value in real time being converted up. So we also have the mapping matter fixture. So the mapping matter is a third-party piece of software which allows you to calculate the best projector positions and the best angles and all that kind of stuff, and you can see what's called a heat map. So in projection, when we have a heat map, we're talking about when we project light, the more it's spread, the weaker it is, because it's less concentrated, and so that means the signal is going to be cooler. So the more concentrated the light is, the hotter it is. So when you have a heat map lets you determine how evenly spread the power of your projection is. So mapping matter lets you calculate your heat maps, calculate your projector positions and your lens settings and ratios, all that kind of thing. And so when you use the mapping matter fixture, it will just let you load your mapping matter preset, and then that will it will apply it to any of the existing projectors within the project, and if there aren't enough projectors to mimic the mapping matter project, it will bring in more projectors so that everything is set up as you had it in mapping matter. Okay, so we also have, in relation to this, we have a simple modeler. Let's just zoom in on that one a little bit. And it's because I've got the wrong screen selected. There we go. So the surface modeler is quite useful for manipulating surfaces a little bit. You've got a few useful tools, like you can generate planes on any of the 3 axes, you can generate cubes, you can generate curved screens, we can make arrays both in a linear and radial fashion. You could then use these various tools to manipulate components, or just select some of the vertices to work on. Oh, there we go. So you can see I've got pink selected vertices on those ones. Manipulate it how you need, make your surface, and you can save that as an object. Once the object is saved, you can head over to the Canvas editor page. So what this page does, this page allows you to adjust. I'm going to just change that image there to make it a little bit easier to see. It allows you to adjust how your texture is applied to the surface of your screen model. And in 3D modeling terms, that's what we refer to as UV mapping. So just to give you an idea, so we can see my little preview here on the right, and if I manipulate those points, I can change what is actually shown on that screen, like so. So I'm just playing with this in a 2D fashion. There are ways that you can manipulate this in 3D as well. There we go. So you can see that I can adjust how that's all working. You can apply this on planar, cylindrical, spherical modes, so they're really useful for different types of shape. Again, you can change the base axes that these are applied on by right clicking on them. So when I right click, you can see that the letters there, so we've got XY on the sphere, right click gives me ZX, right click gives me YZ, and right click takes me back to XY. We've got a few tools here. So the one with the eye, this is point of view projection. In fact, I'm going to show you this one because I've got it set up there. So let's just bring this over to the side a little bit. So with point of view projection, we can specify a viewpoint, and in this case it is the location of the projector, and we can make it so that when we view from that point, the mapping will look correct. So there we go. So if I do something like that, we'll see that when I apply this in a moment, what we see on the screen is going to be relative to this viewing angle. And to apply it, you need to select both the screen and the projector. Then you press the button, and there we go. You can see that relative to my projection cone, so it's taken the projection cone as the whole area of the texture, and then it's displaying the image on the screen in accordance to that position. The next one along allows us to export a template. So in this case, our template, we'd see this overall area will be our texture, and we'd get this white outline here to show us how it's being applied to this screen surface. And you can use the template to sort of give to other members of your creative team, so that if they're making content, they can know where their pixels need to fall within the screen area to hit certain areas of the target. Okay, so if you do have any questions, now would be a very, very good time to actually jump in and pose me some questions. Okay, so we've got, let's get something in there as well. We might as well have a quick look at the output page. So we've got our 3 main fixture types there. So the output section on the AI button, if we go to the output tag at the bottom, and then we go to the outputs section, so that's the DVI icon and the 3 DVI icons there. Okay, so the nice thing with the output page is that it provides the tools that you need for the jobs related to that fixture type. So rather than put all of the tools on one output page and use the same page for every single fixture type, we felt it got a bit crammed and a bit busy. So as you flick through these fixture types, you'll see something along the same sort of logic. You've generally got the thing on the left is what you're sampling or you're working with or you're taking from, and the right is your output. So on the screen we can see this. The projector we can see this as well, like so, and the projector we get our model view so that we can manipulate that for our mapping. And on the modular LED fixture, again we see similar. We see texture here, and here we're seeing our channels and our universes of output. So although we're outputting data, it is essentially the same kind of thing. We've got an input, a thing that we sample, and we've got an output. And so on this one we have channels and universes that we can set, but on the video outputting ones, such as the projector or the screen, we can actually see direct relationships to our output numbers there at the top. Okay, so on the screen fixture, we do also have a rather useful keystone tool. This is a relatively new one. So obviously we can use the keystone to apply 4-point geometric distortion. So this is really useful if maybe you're projecting on an item and you have to come in off axes. So in the ideal world you're always going to project 90 degrees perpendicular to your screen, but in reality a lot of the time you can't have your projector completely perpendicular to the centre of the screen, so you have to come in at an angle. And so when you come in at an angle, your projection is actually going to spread sort of like, take that one down. Commonly if you come in at the side, your image is going to spread like that, and so what you can do is you can compensate in the software so that the final result on your target will actually even out as you would expect. Sometimes you might be projecting on a target and you'll find that actually the wall is a bit bumpy, or it's a non-standard surface, and you want to sort of give it some manipulation just to account for small discrepancies within certain areas. This is where the grid warp can come in useful. So it starts with 3 columns by 3 columns, but I'm just going to add some rows and columns so we can see what's going on. And so what we can do is we can grab these points and we can manipulate those specific parts of the image, like so. And the nice thing with the grid warp and the keystone is that they are compound together, so you can see here those distortions I've just added in on the grid warp. Those ones there and those ones there as well. And you can also save, you can export these. So if we go to the grid warp page, we've got the export button there, which is really quite useful. And when you save, that's going to take both your keystone and your grid warp. So the projector fixture has a few extra things built into it as well, which can be quite handy. So the primary one that is very useful is edge blending. So we used to do the edge blending just directly in this little window here, but we've given it its own dedicated window now so that you've got a little bit more control over it. Before I do that, I'm just going to put my screen somewhere better, my projector somewhere better I should say, just so that I've got a fuller view here. Oh, that was completely the wrong button. Let me just get some more of that screen. Okay, just take that in a little bit. There we go, that'll be enough. I just wanted to fill my output a little bit there. There we go, okay. So if we want to apply edge blending, along the top we've got these icons. The fourth icon in. Okay, so when we're in the edge blending window, the controls work as they have previously done. So we have 2 sets of lines. The green lines are the inside of the blend. The red line is the outside of the blend. You'll notice initially it doesn't do anything because we now have an activate button here on the top. So if I give that a quick press, there we go. So we can now see this increase in brightness here. So most of you are probably familiar with the concept of edge blending, but just to make sure, whenever we project, we're creating light on the surface. And exactly the same as with fixtures, if you focus two lights at the same point, you are going to get a brighter area, what we call a hot spot. Now, if we're working with multiple projectors, it's common to do a blend, so we overlap the edge of one with the edge of another, and we make it look like it's a single consistent image. So in order to do this, we need to make sure that the brightness is consistent along the whole surface and that we don't have any hot spots. And so this is where edge blending comes in. So this will be the edge of one of my screens, and I can adjust the area over which this gradient happens, and I can also adjust the fall off of the gradient as well to compensate for different brightness of projectors. Now with this tool you can actually bring in some kind of strange angles as well, which means that you can edge blend on some kind of funky surfaces, things that might sometimes be a little bit awkward otherwise, like so. Okay. So I think you kind of get the idea of the edge blend there. You can of course manually enter coordinates for your in and out points, and you can manually adjust the blends with the faders here if you prefer. Some people prefer to enter coordinates. A lot of people will calculate their edge blendings numerically in advance, so they'll know that they want to do a 10% blend, and so they'll have calculated the exact pixel positioning and size that they need to use in their project. I'm quite a fan of properly calculating first and then going from there. Okay, let's just turn that one off for the moment. So we've got another couple of tools along the top here. That first one is just our standard mapping editor window. The second one along is Auto Map. So Auto Map is quite useful if you are mapping a surface that is maybe non-conventional, i.e. interesting and not just rectangular. If you're mapping the surface and you've got a model which accurately reflects your surface, so everything has to be matched for this to work. You need to enter the correct lens ratio values into AI as well for this to work. But essentially what we can do is we can select 4 points of the model, and at this point, now I've selected my 4, I would see these crosshairs on my output, and I'd look on my physical projection screen, and where those points lie I would click, and what it will do, it will take the model and it will reposition it accordingly. So it's not a great example I've done there, but I just wanted to give you a simple example. This can really save you a lot of time on mapping, just by getting a starting position pretty much there. I find with this it's never 100% accurate, it's kind of high 90s accurate, but it really does save you a lot of time when you come to editing the vertex positions. So the next one that is along, I can't really show you, I can maybe open up the configuration window. So the next one is for the built-in Viozo camera-based warp and blend. So it's a system which uses the camera to look at your screen surface. It will then automatically warp and blend any projectors within your project, so that they are a consistent image and consistent brightness. Now, in the ideal world, you'd always use the automatic calibration over the manual calibration, but there are times when the automatic calibration isn't great. It requires quite a dark room, so it's not really you can't really do it while someone's programming lights. That said, it can be done in around 5 minutes or so per projector. So quite often I find the best option is to go to the LD that you're working with when you're both programming, ask them if maybe they'd like to take their lunch now, and explain that when they get back from their lunch it means they will then have a clear hall for them to really fill their boots and just get on with their programming and not have a video in their way. And so it kind of works. You need a little time to yourself, but when you've had that time to yourself you can then just withdraw and give everyone else the time that they need. So I'm not going to go through this process today. We've done some webinars on this, we've got some videos on it as well. Okay, so let's jump out of there. Viozo is included with all versions of AI except for the very lowest dongle, which is the Anjuna one. But it is on Bondi and it is on the Miami level. Okay, so if you do have any questions, now would be very, very good. Half an hour in, I have not had any questions that I can jump on and answer yet. I may, if we don't have any in the next few minutes, I may well call it a day there, because otherwise I am repeating exactly what I've done in previous webinars. And the previous ones, as I mentioned, are still all available on the Avolites Facebook page in the videos section. Okay, let's have a think. Okay, so the only page that we didn't look at there was the stage patch page. So this is something I really don't have very much time to go into at all today. It gets very deep, the rabbit hole with this one. There is a big, I actually did a special 90-minute webinar on using Salvation a couple of weeks ago. Essentially, what we see here with Salvation is it's a modular node-based engine, and it means that you can program things, be that control systems or generative graphics or anything at all really. You've got a couple of hundred modules that come with the software. You can add these modules, let's just throw something in there like so. We can then add another module maybe. There we go. And we can drag connections between those modules like so to create sort of useful functions and do certain things. An overview, unfortunately, is not the time for me to go into there because I could speak about it for hours. As I mentioned, there is a 90-minute webinar that I did a couple of weeks ago. That's on the Avolites Facebook page. There is also a series that I made on YouTube a couple of years ago, which has quite a few hours of Salvation training. I can't think how many it is off the top of my head. I'm going to say 6 hours, something in that region. Like any kind of programming language, and that's essentially what this is, we can give you the starting blocks and we can sort of teach you the logic and give you an idea of how things are laid out. But really, to sort of progress with the Salvation side, you do need to play. It's worth doing a bit of background learning, so maths can be useful, a bit of algebra. Trigonometry is very useful in graphics. Maybe even some shader code, so you could go to thebookofshaders.com and do some learning there. Shader Toy, that was another good one that I mentioned. Or you could look at GLSL. You could look at GLES more specifically as well. And pretty much most of the stuff that you find GLES is pretty much always going to work with AI. Some of the GLSL does, some of it doesn't, because there have been some updates to GLSL that we haven't included. Okay, so let me just have a quick look there. Right. So let's tell you some useful things that you should probably all know, but it's useful to know anyway. So within the software there are always a few things that tell you useful bits of information, or give you access to information. If you look at the top center of the screen here, we've got a section that says Avo Intuition. Now you'll notice that whenever I hold my mouse over something, it gives me some information. Some of it is more descriptive than others. That one just says multi-layer widget. That one says media tiles, and that one actually gives a suggestion: left click to launch clip, right click to open clip properties. We've got fixtures group selector, select a fixture or group of fixtures in your virtual stage. So this is, we call it intuition. It's basically tooltips. So that is one thing that you can always do in AI to sort of find something out. Further to that, we've got a couple of buttons up here in the top of the screen. So we've got keyboard shortcuts, that's the keyboard button, and we've got a link to the manual. So obviously if I click on the manual, it's going to open up the manual. The manual has a proper index in it. There we go. There we go. So you can actually properly jump to pages if you want. It's just, for instance, I can jump straight in there like that. The search works now. I've populated all the search engine. The keyboard shortcuts, what we do there, we realised that there were sort of three main combinations of keys: the Control, the Shift, and the Alt button. You'll see this key map varies from page to page. Oh, I've got a question now. I'm going to jump in and answer the question. So the question is, can scene triggers be track independent? No. So when a scene trigger is saved, it's saving multiple information for multiple layers. So if, for instance, if I select this scene trigger, there we go, and hopefully what I can do here, if I just change some of the values, so we can see that layer 2 is on multiply. If I go to layer 1, it's on alpha. So it's actually saving it's saving all of the layers in a single scene trigger, and each of those layers has its own settings. So yes, unfortunately, the way that scene triggers currently work, you couldn't sort of take a scene trigger. You couldn't make a scene trigger of, say, the color values on layer 1 and apply those onto layer 2. I will put that in as a suggestion, though. It's actually quite a good thought. Okay. Okay, so manual, we had the keyboard shortcuts. Oh yeah, so the keyboard shortcuts, that will just change according to the page you're on. So if I click off of there, and we go to a page where I know that there's going to be less shortcuts. So you can see, and see on that one we've actually got the Alt button included. So what we do is we only show the keys that are relevant to that current page. Not so the answer question Steve has is there something that can do that, like the colour info? Not in the way that you are requesting. Scene triggers is the only way to currently do that, but they are at the moment locked to layer specifics. I'm going to have a word with my development team and see if they've got any thoughts or suggestions on how we could expand that, because I do I do understand what you're saying there. It would be quite useful to be able to take a, like you apply palettes, I suppose, on the console, to be able to take a palette and then apply it to any of your layers or fixtures. I concur that that would be a useful thing. I suppose that is the other option, really. If you are working on a console, you could do this using palettes and the like. Okay. Okay, I am trying to think. I am a little stuck because I was hoping. I appreciate the question, Steve Thurkettle. Thank you very much for that. And we did have a question from Craig earlier, but unfortunately I couldn't approach it because it was one for the development team. So I've got a real feeling, based on the minimum questions I've had and the very low viewer numbers, I think this is probably not going to happen at this time again. Let's keep going. Okay, so I have got 7 minutes left booked on this session, so if anyone does have any more questions, they should probably jump in now. Let's have a quick think. We did release 12.1 of AI a couple of weeks ago. It's worth bearing in mind that for 12.1 we are going to have to say that it is needing Windows 10, a 64-bit build of Windows 10. We are intending to update our website. We are a few team members short at the moment, as you can imagine, which is making things a little bit more complicated, but it's very much on our to-do list. Otherwise, the rest of the specifications are the same, the requirements. We are talking either, if you're using Radeon AMD cards, we would recommend the Radeon WX 7100s. That's what we use in the Q3s and the older R servers as well. You can use two Radeon cards together. They need an S400 sync card to work together. You can, in your self-build, use GeForces, NVIDIA's. They will come a little bit better for some of the shader code stuff, but do not try and use two GeForces together in a machine, because the way that their SLI works is counterproductive for our software and will actually reduce performance. We would always recommend having a dedicated system drive and a dedicated media drive. So the way that Windows works is your C drive, where your operating system is, when the machine is running, the machine is often writing to that C drive a thing called a page file or a memory file. So automatically any use of that drive is at half efficiency because there's already an action going on. So having a dedicated separate drive to keep all of your content on will give just better performance. Again, the type of drive is up to you. In our current servers we are using NVMe drives, which is a really nice, fast, modern way of serving your media. We use the Samsung 970 EVOs, I think, and they're really nice units. And in fact, in the Q4s, we use multiple of these NVMe drives raided together to make a really fast system. We would also, in terms of CPU, we're not locked to Intel or AMD. Historically, we've always gone Intel because historically Intel has been a better processor. But I would actually be interested to hear any feedback from anyone that's using any of the modern AMD Ryzen CPUs or Ryzen-based CPUs, because from what we're seeing on paper, it's potentially possible that they are about to sort of outperform some of the high-end Intels, and come in at a very much lower price as well, very much lower. Okay, so if you want to know more about servers or available software licenses, you can head over to Avolites.com. We've got a product page up there that you can have a look at. Let's get that page up there as well. We are continuing with